Welcome to the January 9th, 2023 Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. The board believes it is in its best interest and the best interest of the students of the district to hear comments from district residents. An opportunity will be given later in the meeting for public comment both in person and through the chat feature, which will be read by Mr. Roos. This meeting is being live streamed and video recorded with sound for public broadcasts. All participants joining via Zoom will be muted upon entry. So on behalf of the board, I want to start our meeting tonight by congratulating Dr. Mamine on his new nomination to become the Pennsylvania Secretary of Education. And as noted in the letter sent out this morning, as to compliment the governor-elect on his fantastic choice. That said, we are sad to see him leave. We are committed to continuing the work Dr. Mamine has been leading over the past 15 months. This includes exploring opportunities for healthy start times and full-day kindergarten and embracing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and that they will remain at the forefront of the district's focus. Pending board approval this evening, Dr. Mamine's resignation will be effective January 16th. To that end, our plan as a school board is to identify and appoint an acting superintendent for the remainder of this school year. And as you can imagine, this opportunity has arisen quite quickly, and therefore our goal is to name the acting superintendent by our next full board meeting on Monday, January 23rd. In the interim, our highly qualified cabinet level administrators will be handling day-to-day issues and any concerns that may arise. Our next step will be conduct a search for a new superintendent whom we hope to have in place prior to September 2023. Based on our recent experience, I believe that this is a realistic timeframe. We intend to hire a firm with expertise in educational leadership searches, and we will both provide new opportunities for community input, as well as revisit the extensive and thoughtful input that was provided in 2021. There was a lot of work that went into that, and we want to acknowledge and appreciate that community input that we had previously. So while we're sad that Dr. Mamine is leaving, we won't let the upcoming transition derail the important progress accomplished under his tenure. And again, congratulations, Dr. Mamine. Please know that all of us in Lower Merion School District are rooting for your continued success.
Thank you. Thank you so much, President Klein. And thank you to the many educators, students, parents, community members, legislators, and just partners here at Lower Merion School District. I just want to say thank you because you've been extremely supportive of my work here and tenure here at Lower Merion School District. And, you know, to keep it very, very simplistic, this is a great place to work. It's just, I mean, the students are lovely, the educators are lovely, and again, all of the partners that I mentioned are absolutely lovely and fully engaged, which is exciting, which is a proud pride point that we should really lift up here in Lower Merion. It's a great thing. I'm very encouraged and focused, and we'll, again, it's not bye-bye, I'll see you soon, in regards to the best practices that happen here on a daily basis in the Lower Merion School District. And it's phenomenal, and it's work that needs to be modeled throughout the Commonwealth. I would be remiss if I did not, provide just clear insight and thankfulness for my school board. To select a superintendent to come into a place with high expectations and some very critical needs areas that need to be addressed, establishing trust and transparency to be able to trust me for the past 15 months to lead this work. I'm truly humble and thankful. Hats off to the work that you do. You are an extremely high-performing school board. And I say that with great authenticity from experience. The work that you do at this level is absolutely phenomenal, and I know it's going to continue as we continue to move students into innovative careers and to innovative careers that will have the opportunity to really change the normalcy or the old normal of the Commonwealth. I'm so proud of having the opportunity to work with this board. And my administrative team, which I will not give them eye contact right now, we're truly a family. And the love and the sweat, the work ethic, the long hours, it's all worth it. It's all worth it because I truly have an administrative team, and that's not simply from central office. That's central office from end to building throughout the district that would do anything for children to be successful. Just all hands on deck, truly committed to this work. It's a point of pride that the community should be proud of. The data, the programming is not by accident. Our administrators are exceptional. To our teachers, teaching is not like it was back in the day, stand and deliver pedagogy and instruction. Our teachers are innovative and passionate about the work that they do. And I'm going to miss them because they are, again, just the best in the business. And of course, it's easy to talk about our students. Very easy to talk about our students. They really bring all of this stuff full circle and why we do this work, why you work so hard as a board, why the community is so passionate and the parents are so compassionate about the things that they want for their children, why the administration works so hard, why the teachers are delivering this strong pedagogy and instruction. The students make it very easy. And I must say, to even take it to the granular parts, all the way down to the granular parts in regards to the governor-elect's nomination, we're talking about the governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And one of our Lower Merion students was on the transition team for high school students throughout the Commonwealth, informing the governor on these are the things that high school students need. We should be very proud of that. That's not by accident. The only high school student on the transition team is a Lower Merion High School student. We should be proud of that. And so again, thank you. And I will say, farewell for now, but I'll see you soon. It's not goodbye. And I trust that throughout my 15 months here, that you were able to see, this administration thing is serious business. And, we wear our emotions on our sleeves. And we just work hard for children. And it's worth it here. You can honestly say to yourselves, to your friends, to your colleagues, to your neighbors, education in Lower Merion School District works. It works. One of the best school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There are 500 of them. You have to take pride in that. And I thank you for allowing me into your family to be able to lead alongside you through some of these major issues. And in closing, what President Klein said earlier, the work is not complete. This isn't a stop point. There's still 5 priority areas that the administration will continue to address. And I'm very hopeful that these 5 priorities, we'll be able to check those off of the list in the near future because we have the administrative team and the passion and purpose to get it done for our children. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. So I guess now is to the business of the resignation. We need to add an additional agenda item this evening to accept the addition of Dr. Mameen's resignation as superintendent effective close of business January 16th, 2023, and that the board waives the requirement of the 90-day notice. Do I have a motion to approve adding the agenda item?
So moved, regretfully.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes. So next is the recommended action. So I recommend that the Board of School Directors accepts the resignation of Dr. Khalid and Mameen as Superintendent of Schools effective close of business January 16th, 2023, and waives the requirement of the 90-day notice. Do I have a motion to approve?
You have a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You do need to ask for public comment.
Oh,
And just from people here, but you do need to at least ask for public comment. Correct.
Sorry, okay. So prior to voting, although we have approved, do we have any in-person public comment on this particular agenda item? Okay, well,
Okay.
we followed the
Good.
rules and
You
did
are
what we
good.
needed to do. So, all in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion passes. And likewise, I'm very sad about it. We will move on. So next, we will move on to the presentation, and I'll ask Dr. Mamine to present the presentation.
Ready? Thank you so much, President Klein. I will defer to Dr. Alexis McGloin, Assistant Superintendent, as we'll go through the disaggregated data presentation, which was previously presented at the Education Committee meeting.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Mamine. Curriculum Committee meeting, right.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So there's some slight adjustments based on feedback, but I'm happy to again welcome our curriculum supervisors to really take the majority of the presentation. I'll do a little of it, but the majority of the presentation will be brought to you by Nancy Aconcha-Mesa, who is our K-6 STEM supervisor, Dr. Dory Martin-Patone, K-6 Humanities, Jason Lilly, our lead curriculum supervisor, and also 7 to 12 STEM supervisor, and Lauren Hopkins, who's our 7th through 12th humanities supervisor. And so Jason's going to begin and lead us through, and we'll all jump in at different points through the presentation.
All right, thank you. As Dr. Mamine shared earlier, the passion of all the stakeholders in this district is reflected through our students, and that's what you'll see tonight. It's an opportunity for us to share our second data presentation, which is broken out in a disaggregated way so you can see how the performance of different student groups across our district. Before we jump into the data itself, it's important that we all have a common reference point, so we start with some definitions. PSSA is the Pennsylvania State System of Assessment. There are 2 types of data you will see today presented. One is achievement, which is an individual score. The other is growth, which I'll explain a little bit more as we go through, but it's how students learn over time rather than just a snapshot. There will be various subgroups presented throughout the presentation. The same subgroups will be represented on each slide. And for this presentation, a subgroup is represented by any group that's large enough to stand alone as a group itself. So it's a part of the larger student body, a part of the whole. So as I shared, there are 2 types of data you will see tonight. One is achievement, one is growth. Achievement is that individual students score. Students receive a score of advanced, proficient, basic, or below basic. It's a snapshot in time. It's a one-time event. Growth data is also going to be included. The thing that's important to know about growth is absolutely connected to student achievement. Students get a projected score from the state. They project how a student will do, and you will see, and again, I'll go into more detail, growth is based on whether a student meets that projection, exceeds it, or doesn't quite get there. There's also student individual ranking across the state in respect to their peers that goes into the growth colors that you will see tonight. Both types of data are important. What you see on this slide is from the state. This is how they kind of add some or define better what achievement and growth are and the different types of things that impact achievement and growth. One of the things that I'll just highlight here, and you'll hear it throughout the presentation, is that achievement is really that individual snapshot in time, whereas growth is a measure over time and how a student is progressing. Achievement is really an individual performance against the state standards, mastery of state standards, whereas growth, again, is growing over time to see how students are progressing in their learning. So some things to keep in mind before we jump into the data. The last 3 years have been challenging for everyone, both here, across our state, across our country, and around the world. COVID has certainly changed what education looked like over those 3 years and even where we are today. So some things that happened during that time. We had a period of time where we essentialized our curriculum. We prioritized certain areas there. Students were participating in different learning platforms. We had a year here at Lower Merion where students had 3 different options for a learning platform to choose from. You will see that data included tonight. Students, because of social distancing, had limited or less opportunities for hands-on experiences, labs, and things like that within science. Less group work, less collaboration, although we were able to do some of that virtually. And basically, there were just disruptions to the learning process. School didn't look like it did prior to when schools closed in March of 2020. Before we get into the 2022 data, the 2021 state rankings were released. It's just important that we all kind of take a look at and reflect on the achievement of our students as a whole. These are the different places where the state reports out our data. You have math, ELA, and science reflected here. There are 2 things. Like I said, you're going to see 2 types of data tonight. One is achievement, one is growth. They're both different, but they both yet are ranked across the state. If you look here, this is where Lower Merion ranks in comparison to the rest of the state. As Dr. Mumeen said, there are 500 districts in the state. However, if you look at the column on the right, in many instances, there are more than 500 represented. That's because anyone that participates in these assessments is included. So a charter school would count and things like that. So when you look at the 638 participants on the 4th through 8th grade math PSSA, Lower Merion ranks number 2 in the state. That's an achievement. Many districts that have high achievement do not also have high growth. Lower Merion has both, and you can see that across the board. We have high growth and high achievement. That's exactly where you want to be. Our students are growing in their learning, and they are also achieving at a high level. When state data comes into the district, I just think it's important to take an opportunity here tonight to talk about what we do with that. And I think that's a question a lot of people have. So when data comes into the district, it usually happens over the summer. When that comes into the district, we take a look at that from a central office level, sort of that balcony view. We dig into that data from a district lens. So what you see here, the very first line, is a district lens. We do look at things like how different grade levels performed, how different subgroups perform, how different buildings compare to each other. We look at things that impact students across the district. So things like curriculum would be explored if we saw differences across buildings or differences within certain groups. We then develop a list of trends that we see across the data from a district perspective. We then pass that information on to the building leaders. And collaboratively, we then develop district goals and building level goals. One thing that's very different, though, between the district level look at data and the building level is from a district lens, we really don't know the students deeply. We just have the data. So we're looking at this without knowing anything else about the students. At the building level, they can go much, much deeper. They, again, look at grade level data, they look at subgroups, they look at, again, a little deeper, classroom performance, individual student performance, and in the end of all this is MTSS, and this is something you'll hear about. This is something the district has moved to over the last 2 years, and that's really looking at the whole child. It's not just the data, it's not just this snapshot of state assessments, it's attendance, it's behavior, it's classroom performance, it's effort, it's all of those different things, and in the end, the goal is to help a student be successful. This slide is sort of a different way of looking at what I just shared, but it talks a little bit about what happens at the central office level, that district level, and then what happens at the building level. What you can definitely see here is the buildings have the ability to go deeper, especially when looking at qualitative data and what they know about a student that goes beyond state assessments and even local assessments. I'm going to pass this over to Dr. McGloin, who's going to talk a little bit about our students, the different subgroups across the district, and free and reduced lunch.
Thank you. So typically, when we're doing our disaggregated data, we want to also show you what the district as a whole looks like. As our numbers show this year, our free and reduced lunch population is actually 15.3%. That's up from the last time we did it. I believe it was like 12.9 at the point when we did it 2 years ago. So that number has gone up. It's gone up for every one of our subgroups with the exception of our white population. That subgroup actually, that free and reduced lunch number has declined. So we have less students who are meeting the standards for free and reduced lunch for that population. But you could see that 15.3%, it really is it's a blend of all of our students, that it's not just one specific subgroup. Our largest subgroup in that population is Black and African American. You can see that 57.8% of those students make up that subgroup, but it's a smaller group. There's only about 8%. Almost 9% of students that actually fall into that subgroup. So they're about a third of the students in our free and reduced lunch population. It really is a nice blend. The district in general, and I've said this so many times, it's really a neat district because 65% of our students identify as white, and then you see it's a blend. Asian is our second largest subgroup in the district, and then it's really a mix between that. And so it's a nice, diverse group of students that sit in our district that we have. Next slide. We also looked at it by elementary, middle, and high school. And so, Jason, you have to move it along. Thank you. So from an elementary standpoint, no surprise, our buildings that have our largest free and reduced lunch population are also our Title I schools. Penn has the highest free and reduced lunch population at the elementary level, not in the district actually, but at the elementary level, Penn has the highest free and reduced lunch population at 18.8%, Penn Valley 17.3%, and Belmont Hills is 16.2%. They are our 3 Title I schools in the district. Next slide. And then at the middle level, you'll see that it's fairly equal across at least 2 of the buildings, with Bala Cynwyd having our lowest free and reduced lunch population and Welsh Valley at 15.8 with the largest free and reduced lunch population in the district. And pretty much even within our subgroups, there are a lot of consistencies across the middle level schools. The school with the largest free and reduced lunch population in the district is Lower Merion High School. Lower Merion High School has 19% of our students qualifying for free or reduced lunch. When you start to look at the data presentation that we'll be going through, we actually don't note it as free and reduced lunch, but instead it's noted as economically disadvantaged. That number, though, and free and reduced number is the same number. They really equal each other. So when you see the presentation, when the state pulls the data and they call it a subgroup, it's economically disadvantaged. And so that's the makeup of our district.
Thank you. When we start talking about the data, which we're almost there are different colors used to represent growth, and there are different colors used to represent district growth than there are for subgroups growth. So I just want to highlight those colors here. When we talk about district growth, either a whole grade level or the entire district as a whole, there are 5 colors used to represent whether students have met the mark, they're meeting those projected achievement goals, or they're above, it goes into the blue. So on level is the green, making the growth is green, exceeding is blue, and then if you don't meet the mark, you see yellows or reds, depending on how below meeting that projection the students are as a whole within that whole grade level or the district as a whole. So there are 5 colors. Anytime you see blue, that means students have exceeded the state projections for achievement. It also means that students have grown more than 1 year of understanding in 1 year of time. So they've learned more than 1 year's worth of information in 1 year of time. That's how the state correlates those 2 things. When we do look at a specific subgroup, there are only 3 colors. There are not 5. If a student meets their mark, they are represented in green. If they are exceeding, it's blue. If they are not meeting the mark, it's yellow. There is no dark blue and there is no red. It's just meeting, exceeding, or not quite there. As we now jump into our data I'm going to turn things over to Nancy Akanchi-Mesa to start with elementary math.
Okay, good evening. This slide shows the 2019, 2021, and 2022 PSSA achievement of the grade 3 disaggregated groups. Keep in mind that on this slide, as well as the following slides, these are different groups of students. The students represented in the 2021 and 2022 data have had interrupted learning and a very different school experience than the students represented in the 2019 data. There is no color coding here since this is the first assessment that students take. There is no achievement projected and therefore growth cannot be determined. This data is baseline and is used to create achievement targets for grade 4. Achievement was maintained or improved in 3 out of the 6 subgroups from 2021 to 2022. One group in particular, the Hispanic subgroup, went from 73% proficient and advanced in 2021 to 83% proficient and advanced in 2022. This slide shows the PSSA achievement and growth of the grade 4 disaggregated groups in 2019, 21, and 22. In 2021, no growth data is available for this group because they did not take the PSSAs in 2020 to have any growth attributed. The achievement scores for this particular 4th grade cohort became their baseline scores, as it was the first state assessment that they took. The 2022 fourth grade achievement projections are based on the grade 3 PSSA achievement scores from 2021. As a reminder, blue means there is evidence that the group exceeded the growth standard. Green means there is evidence that the group met the growth standard, and yellow means that there is evidence that the group did not meet the growth standard. 4 out of the 6 subgroups exceeded the growth standard, with one group not meeting the growth standards as indicated by the yellow, even though their achievement improved. This particular group didn't meet the projected achievement targets from the state. Achievement improves in all of the 6 subgroups from 2021 to 2022, in particular for the African American group, going from 29% proficient and advanced to 63% proficient and advanced. On this slide, you will see the grade 5 achievement and growth starting at the district level and then by subgroups for the last 3 years that PSSA was administered. Looking at the 2022 data, there was evidence that the grade 5 group as a whole exceeded the growth standard, as well as 4 out of the 6 subgroups. For the other 2 groups, African American and white students, there was evidence that they met the growth standard as indicated by the green shading. Achievement improved in 4 out of the 6 subgroups from 2021 to 2022. Here I would like to highlight the Hispanic subgroup who went from 53% proficient and advanced in 2021 to 75% proficient and advanced in 2022. All right, now I'm going to turn it back over to Jason.
Thank you. And before I go into our middle school data, remember last year our middle schools were represented by 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 5th grade was still at our elementaries. So before I jump into the elementary or the middle school data, it's important to note that when this data was shared to us from the state acknowledged that there were certain groups that were most impacted achievement-wise by COVID and what happened during those last several years. Middle school specifically was called out as a group that was most impacted. Even within middle schools, the state acknowledged that 2 groups in particular had the biggest challenges, those being African American students and those who were economically disadvantaged. So the state saw that as a trend across the entire state. You will see in our data, some of those trends do show up for us, but in other places, it's a little different for us. So this starts our 6th grade. Some things I want to call attention to here. In trying to better understand achievement and growth, and that each group of students is a unique group of students, if you look at our 2022 score for the whole district, we're at 72%. you notice that is actually higher than it was in 2021 when we were blue, meaning we exceeded the projected scores. In 2022, it's now red, even though our achievement scores are actually higher. That's because the individual group for 2022 had a higher projection of how they would achieve. It is also important to note that when one particular subgroup is significantly larger than the others, which is definitely the case here, that group as a whole, in this case, the group that's showing yellow, that group can impact the overall district growth color if such a large group doesn't meet their standard. The same thing could be true in reverse. So if you had a group that was the largest group that was exceeding the standard, it could skew what your whole district or grade level data looks like as far as the growth color is represented. So sometimes our achievement is actually up and our growth is down. They are two different measures. It's important that you understand the difference between the two. Actually, before I go on, I do want to highlight something here. While the middle school data is challenging, and again, the state acknowledges challenging for everybody, in this particular sixth grade group, I want to call attention to our Asian subgroup because in 2022, not only are they over 90%, that is the highest number we have anywhere on this entire chart over all the years we're reporting so far in this presentation. So that group for sixth grade, regardless of what was happening during the pandemic, they have shown tremendous success as far as achievement is concerned. In seventh grade, you see similar trends. As a whole, our district went from blue to red. Again, our achievement actually went up a couple percent, but the growth color is down. And if you look similarly, our largest subgroup, in this case the white students, that group as a whole did not meet the state projections. On this particular slide in seventh grade, I do want to draw some attention to our Hispanic subgroup. From 2019 to 2021 to 2022, they've continued to grow during that time in achievement. So their achievement has increased year over year for the data that's reported in this particular slide. Eighth grade, I know I shared about the two subgroups in particular that were most impacted. Across the state, eighth grade is the group that had the biggest challenge. To paint that picture a little bit, this is the group that really did not experience a middle school experience that kids would have had in the past. Their sixth grade year is the year schools closed. Their seventh grade year is the year we had 3 different platforms in place. And their eighth grade year is the year kids first returned back to schools where we had social distancing and things going on like that still. So these students in particular, eighth graders across the state, did not have a middle school experience that we would expect or hope for these kids that students had had in the past. That is reflected in our data here, and this is one place where those two particular subgroups the state has called attention to, African American and economically disadvantaged. We do see those two groups coming through as our lowest achieving groups in eighth grade. As our students transition to the high school, we have an Algebra 1 keystone. The Algebra 1 keystone is an area where every one of our subgroups is exceeding the state expectations for achievement. It is an area where we've had some changes over the years. So while COVID was going on, we also transitioned to an integrated math program. Every student in every subgroup, I won't say that, I'll say that differently. Every subgroup is, as a whole, exceeding their individual growth, or achievement projections. I'm going to turn things back over to Nancy, who's going to talk about science.
Okay, moving into science, this slide shows the achievement and growth of the grade 4 students as a whole and then by subgroups. Achievement improved or was maintained in 5 out of the 6 subgroups from 2021 to 2022. I would like to highlight in particular the African American subgroup who had a 10% increase and the economically disadvantaged group who had an 11% increase. Also, another highlight is that the entire grade level is approaching 100% proficient and advanced. And for 2 groups very close to the 100%, and one group in particular is already at 100%. The third grade ELA and math scores are used to project science achievement for grade 4. Again, since the 2021 cohort did not take any assessments in 2020, there was no achievement projection and hence no growth indicated that year. For the grade 4 group as a whole, even though their achievement was at 96%, they were projected by the state to be higher than 96%, hence the yellow shading. For 3 out of the 6 subgroups in 2022, there was evidence that the growth standard was met, whereas for the other 3 groups, white, multiracial, and economically disadvantaged, it shows yellow, indicating that those subgroups didn't meet the state projected achievement, even though the achievement was rather high for 2 of the groups. This grade 8 science, this slide shows grade 8 science, and that in 2021, at the district level, there was evidence that the group exceeded the projected achievement targets, as well as 2 of the subgroups, multiracial and economically disadvantaged. For the other subgroups, there was evidence that the growth standard was met. Achievement improved for 3 out of the 6 subgroups from 2021 to 2022. In particular, the Hispanic subgroup, who went from 55% proficient and advanced in 2021 to 70% proficient and advanced in 2022. Turning it back over to Jason for Keystone data.
Thank you. So here are our high school biology scores. And what you notice that stands out in this slide is every subgroup is blue, continues to be blue, and has been blue. We have historically exceeded state projections on our biology exams. We are also typically one of the highest achieving school districts in Pennsylvania. You saw that with some of the 2021 data that was shared earlier. If you notice, our district score from 2021 was 77%, which ranked us very high in the state. Our scores are up 7%, so we have 7% more students scoring at proficient and advanced. So I'm confident that even though the 2022 rankings are not released, we will continue to be one of the top districts in the state of Pennsylvania and continue to do so. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Dory Martin-Patone to talk about elementary ELA.
Good evening. As mentioned previously, during the 3rd grade math slide, this slide demonstrates only achievement and is not color-coded for growth because it is a baseline year for PVAS. It is purely showing achievement. In grade 4, the students did not take any assessments in 2020, so there wasn't an achievement projection nor growth attribution. The scores in 4th grade remained consistent overall. The district and all subgroups exceeded or met the growth standard. In 2022, the highest achievement occurred for our Black African American subgroup. In grade 5 ELA, all subgroups met or exceeded the growth standard. In 2022, the Asian and white subgroups were the highest achieving. The district did not meet the growth standard in 2022 due to the largest subgroup being yellow, meaning moderate evidence of growth. The Asian subgroup exceeded the growth standard. While achievement overall remained relatively consistent, the Hispanic subgroup achievement increased by 20%. I'm now going to turn it over to Mrs. Lauren Hopkins.
Good evening. So if there's one word that can sort of describe or sum up our ELA scores, it's the word consistent. So if you look at our scores across the board, you'll see a lot of consistency across our students in ELA. If you think back to one of those earlier slides with our rankings from 2021, you'll see that we were ranked 12th in every area for English language arts. So our achievement and our growth has remained relatively stable over the last 3 years. From an achievement standpoint, both our Black African American and Hispanic subgroups in the 7th grade increased by 7% in achievement from last year from 2021 to 2022. Our multiracial subgroup did drop 11% in their achievement score. However, the students did meet their achievement target. As you can see, they are colored green. So most of our subgroups are making growth by meeting their achievement targets, but the two largest subgroups did not meet their achievement target, even though that largest subgroup does have the highest achievement score. When you look at our 8th grade ELA scores, again, it's important to remember that this is the cohort that really had the most interrupted learning and the most interrupted middle school experience. And again, every single one of our subgroups here in 8th grade increased their achievement from 2021 to 2022, with our multiracial and our Asian subgroups showing the highest achievement at 90%. We did see that our Black, African American, and Hispanic subgroups improved their achievement by 21% and 18% respectively, so their achievement came up significantly. Despite the growth that we saw in achievement, none of our subgroups exceeded their targets here in at the 8th grade level. We did have 3 subgroups that met the target, but none of them exceeded it. And again, we look at our largest subgroup there, not meeting their targets. So this then goes back to that idea that we really do need to look at individual groups of students and their individual growth projections, because we do see good achievement within these subgroups, despite not necessarily always seeing the target being met. Lastly, for ELA, in the Keystone Literature exam, you again see consistency in student performance. There is a minor dip of 1% within our Hispanic subgroup, but all other groups maintained or gained, with our Black African American subgroup increasing their achievement 13%. Students across all of our subgroups are exceeding their targets, so they are showing more than a year's growth in a year's time. So overall, again, our students are making consistent progress throughout our English Language Arts program. And with that, I'm going to turn this back to Jason.
So as I shared early on in the presentation, one of the things we do at the district level is we look for things that stand out in the data, trends, or anything that jumps out at us. In working through this presentation, I thought it was important to call out for the group the things that stood out as far as growth and achievement. On PSSAs in particular, the largest growth was shown by our Hispanic, Asian, economically disadvantaged, and African American subgroups. Our highest achievement was shown by the Asian subgroup, the white subgroup, and multiracial. All of our groups are represented somewhere here on this particular slide. So we either have high achievement or high growth occurring with all of our students. And again, as I shared in the slide about where we fall within the state, very few districts have high growth and high achievement. We have both. So that's something to be proud of. When we move on to the high school level, as you saw, all of our Keystone data is in the blue. We are exceeding state expectations on the Keystone exams. And again, something to share is, if you don't already know this, student projections are based on every data point that a student has prior to taking that assessment. So the fact that we're exceeding the state projections on Keystones with all of the other previous data points taken into consideration is a testament to the efforts here at Lower Merion. All of our groups are exceeding, all subgroups are exceeding, we're all outperforming state expectations as far as achievement and growth. The highest achieving groups, similar to what you saw in PSSA, are our Asian subgroup, our white subgroup, and our multiracial. So this year in 22-23, we've had some changes. We have changed the structure of our elementary and middle schools. So when we start looking at data next year at this time, it will be a little bit different. 5th grade is now part of our middle schools. It is no longer part of the elementary schools. Black Rock is a new school. This will be the first year we actually have data coming in for Black Rock students. So next year will look a little bit different. It also makes it a little challenging this year because students are in different places across the district. So when we talk about looking and going deeper with that data process, the funnel process, we have to make sure that the right data get to the right buildings so that they can work with those students to continue to be successful. We are still coming out of COVID. Any of us that watch the news, you always hear, here's the latest variant, here's what we think is going to happen. It's not gone, it's still here. We still have some challenges, and we have to be ready to deal with those challenges as they come up. So some things that are new this year, I talked about MTSS a little bit again in that data funnel, but MTSS is a way of looking at more than just state assessments for a student and then figuring out what is it exactly we want to do to help them be successful. What kind of things can we try? There's something called the TIPS process, team-initiated problem solving. That is a piece of MTSS, and that is looking at all that data and developing a plan. That is something that is in place this year for the first time, and we're really using that to our advantage to try to help students be successful. Curriculum, I talked a little bit earlier about some of the things that happened during COVID. You know, we had essentialized curriculum and prioritized pieces of our curriculum. We are very much getting back to make sure we're using our full curriculum and our students are experiencing it the way that it was pre-COVID. We have a new data warehousing system, and that's a new change as well. So we're continuing to grow our capacity to look at data and to analyze data and then to put it into use. Our strategic plan included interdisciplinarity. Again, there are changes happening in our district this year for the first time, especially at the middle level where we've really tried to infuse more interdisciplinarity across the board. Going forward, you know, there's good data here. Overall, you know, like it shows, we are one of the top districts in the state when it comes to achievement and growth. We're doing some great things, but we never say that's enough. We always work to do better and challenge ourselves to make sure that all students can be successful. So we're constantly coming up with new ideas. Some of the things we've thought about here to grow ourselves and to grow our students is thinking about connecting with preschools. How can we bridge that? How can we make it better as they transition into our district? Thinking about effects of a push-in model versus pull-out models for both reading and math, and then across the entire district K-12, really expanding our summer programs. We have one of the most robust summer programs of anywhere around, but we're always looking to grow that and expand that. Our students love that when they get there, and we want to continue to grow those things to help them be successful. One-to-one tutoring and different types of tutoring are things that have been part of our district for several years now. We continue to look for ways to grow those things. Obviously, strengthening community partnerships, maybe finding ways to offer tutoring outside the district so we are able to get into the communities to provide that access. And then we've talked a lot about doing universal screeners, especially for math, as math seems to be one of those areas, as the state shared, where year over year, if there are challenges, it's difficult to close those gaps.
So thank you. I would say that we definitely have some strength that we're proud of. The blue is important because that's how we close achievement gap. Getting more than a year's growth in a year's time is how that happens. We recognize that often you'll see two different subgroups really stand out more than others as where the gaps are, which are our African-American subgroup as well as our economically disadvantaged subgroup. I was just thinking about the last time we presented on this, Hispanic really popped out, but we've done some nice work in that subgroup. So that's definitely an area of focus for us. You know that we have targeted programs. We talk about that from a summer perspective and after-school tutoring perspective. I think that's why we see blues in a lot of pockets, but that does not mean that we don't need to continue to work on it and continue to grow, because the achievement isn't where we want it to be in many regards. But I think we're doing a lot to try to make that happen. And, you know, we even talked about it in Achievement Imperative actually this week. We brought this presentation to them as well and had a lot of conversations on what are some other things that we could be doing that we haven't tried yet, just to continue to talk to our community, to talk to our staff, and really think about and around the issues that we know we still have as far as our achievement is concerned, and even growth in some pockets. So I appreciate all four of you presenting today, and any questions that you might have, we're open to.
Thank you, Dr. McLeod, and thank you all for today's presentation. I'm going to open it up if there are members of the board with questions. Ms. Kalish?
I'll go first. I'll try to be brief. I have a statement, a short question, and a more in-depth question. First is I would absolutely love to see any more programs that we'd be talking about with after-school programs, especially at the elementary level. I know our middle and high school, we have a lot of focus on clubs and tutoring programs and stuff, and I'd love to see that expand where we can. I know we have fantastic summer programs at the elementary. I'd love to see some of that during the school year. My brief question is for that one subgroup. I know we had one test where a subgroup had 100% in proficient or advanced. If a subgroup has 100%, does that inherently mean that they can't show growth for the following year? Or is that, am I misinterpreting that? Can you explain that? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's confused by that.
They can show growth, well, it depends. I guess there's like a top at the top, right? But just because you're advanced doesn't mean you can't be more advanced. Does that make sense? Because remember, it's a scale. And if you think of it as like a scale, and you get a
It's-
numerical value that's associated with it.
So it's a percentile exam, it's not it's like it's complicated, I'm just,
You get a scaled score, it's called
Yeah.
a scaled score, which is a number,
Yeah.
right? Then what the state does, the reason you see percents is they then are equated, the scales are then equated to below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced, right? And so, and there's a range in each of those areas, below basic, basic. So when we see the percents are really the number of students that have reached proficient or advanced on the assessment. It's not their
Okay.
scaled score.
so you could have 100% of your students reaching 95%, and that would put them in the advanced category. And if next year they got 97%,
Yeah.
that would still be growth, even though they'd still be in a, I'm
Right.
with you, okay.
The
we're
state
good.
may say that they should have hit 97% of the scale score. Like the scale score should have been higher than it actually was in that advanced range. Am I making sense?
Would you believe I have graduate level education statistics in my background?
No, you're all good.
Okay, my more specific question is, I know in the curriculum committee, we talked a lot about our achievement gap for our Black and economically disadvantaged students. One thing that I was curious about after that meeting was why we think we're seeing scores, especially in the eighth grade slides on slide 21 and 24, why we're seeing scores in those groups that are much higher in science than in math. Because in my head, we tend to group even by your positions. You have your science and math together, and you have your humanities together. And I'm just curious why, if you might have an idea why that is, and if we can work to sort of parlay the science success to some math success.
So one of the things that I will share is the science exams tend to be more related to reading. So the science scores are likely closer matched to our ELA scores because majority
Word
of the questions
problems,
are
right?
reading. It's not a lot of math problems on there, right?
I see.
And 50% of the PSSA exams are on something called the nature of science, which is reading, problem solving. Can you read a graph? Can you read a chart? Can you read the table? Can you read and interpret the statement? So it's a lot of reading comprehension, really, that you see on the science exams, rather than math or problem solving.
Okay, I have a follow-up that you might not know the answer to, and if not, that's 100% fine. Do we see those differences generally in student report card, class scores that they're getting in do students in those groups generally score higher in science than in math? Or is that a testing artifact based on the testing design?
I would say it's probably more related to that test design,
Okay,
because our local assessments are going to be more aligned to what we're doing at the time, whereas these are a more general test. The other thing is that science exam is the only one that still remains, the eighth grade science, that covers grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it covers 4 years of science on one exam. It's the only cumulative assessment that still remains.
I think that's really interesting, and it's an interesting thing to think about as we think about the achievement gap and how we're approaching these things, because some of those numbers in those math scores were a little scary. And if we think about the way that testing is structured in the state, that sort of puts it into a better perspective, and we need to look at kind of a holistic picture. And that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kalish.
Hi, a few things. I'm thinking of how to phrase this. I think that this data and our lack of addressing the opportunity gap that was present in 2019 and is still present in 22 is unacceptable, straight up. My questions around the subgroup variance around if our general assignment assessments are not testing in alignment with the test design, giving us data aligned to the eligible content that makes sense to provide us specific, that's problematic. And the connections to our curriculum design and how we've restructured the elementary school to win periods, and also how the most the biggest drops are in the middle school, and that's where we're going to see the most transition, should be further emphasized. I don't see those things that are general wins as wins. I see them symbolic of us just trying to cast over some pretty dismal data that we should not be proud of, regardless of where we rank in the state. And I don't think they align to our commitment to equity and anti-racism that we've put out. So all of that being said, you know where I stand. My question is, what are we actually doing about it, and how can we disaggregate the data beyond proficient advanced to the subgroup levels across each school so we can get more specific about which classrooms there is success, which classrooms there are not, and what we need to change amongst our educators and in our buildings to have students prioritize and make the progress that they deserve.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think the four of you can speak to this as well. So we're not just like this PSSAs, right, as we know, but we are looking at actual data for like our own benchmark data, which is important. It does align to the standards. The questions align to the standards, and we're able to pull it by standards as well, just to be certain that we are looking at eligible content and standards when we're doing our benchmarking data. We also have some standardized data that we've switched up. So we've put in dibbles at early grades. That was partly why foundations went in. And it's also part of why we put in MTSS, and we've been working towards MTSS because of exactly what you're talking about, because we need to be able to get granular. We need to be able to talk about students and individual data. And so that is all of what's been happening the last couple of years to try to do exactly what you're talking about to make sure that that happens. And I don't want to speak for all of you. If anybody else would like to speak about it, I'm happy to. Jen, you want to jump in as well?
Sure, just because we're mentioning MTSS, one of the things to keep in mind is infused in that, in addition to some of the curricular infrastructure improvements that Dr. McGloin mentioned, is some real focused professional development and job embedded learning that is happening across all teams. So when you think about, as Jason Lilly shared that triangle, and we look at the system level data, what the teams have been trained in doing is something called a team initiated problem solving process, which is an evidence-based protocol. You can see it in the IES guides. Teams are more effective using a protocol like that. Teams have better outcomes. And one of the things that's part of that training is something called a precision statement, where they're digging into individual student data. They're looking very closely at what is happening, where is it happening, why is it happening, and they're working as a team to collaborate on exactly what happens student by student. When you look at the system data, one of the really nice things about using this TIPS process as part of our MTSS is we're looking at how are all students experiencing our curriculum, how are all students experiencing instruction. They do then include looking class by class, and you saw that in the triangle, where, our supervisors look, of course, across the schools. They start looking across classrooms. They do have consultations with principals on individual classrooms, looking class by class, coaching in with principals. A lot of that's at the building and supervisory level. So those conversations do happen, and the way that it happens with the MTSS framework, it really is something that the teams and the leads on this have been phenomenal with this year. They are working with our consultant. They're working collaboratively. We've had several days together. They work with our supervisors, really digging in and making sure we're looking student by student, because no student is just a number, and the PSSA is still just one number among many. So it is a comprehensive experience, and our teams are using that particular process for the first time this year. However, the triangle that Jason shared is a process that's been longstanding in the district, where we're looking at district data. It's just in a more, really more aligned way now with this TIPS process, allowing all of our leaders, all of our interventionists, our CSIs, I'm forgetting the name of them, our coordinators of student intervention, to be able to talk the same language when they're looking at data, so that we are comparing and asking the right questions. So
when can we get a roll-up report then? Or when is the next benchmark? Or where, all these things that are happening, where's the accountability that we can see the data around progress that's being made on the building level towards what you're talking about?
Right, so progress is going to look different depending on what we're talking about. So one of the things we talked about is don't look at data without a question.
So is there interim accountability data that we are able to see benchmarks along the way?
There are benchmarks at every level.
Okay.
What we do have is the way that the achievement teams work is, they're looking at the benchmark data that's in cycle as they're meeting. So in addition to looking at just how are students experiencing class instruction, they're also looking at what assessments just took place, how did our students do, how do we coach back into practice, how does that inform the win times that are going to be occurring, how does that inform Tier 1 instruction as well, because one of the really rich conversations has been, and Dr. Martin Patone talked about this at the last session, where are we being as inclusive as possible and pushing in support and making sure that we're preventing gaps from occurring. So some of the models include some push-in support into the classroom, and teams are being really innovative with that. So we'll have a later update, probably in March, I think, at CCOB, sharing some more, just an update on where we are with MTSS. It's, as we all know, it's a 3 to 5 year process. It's pretty in-depth, but the teams have really done a tremendous job this year working toward common practices to do good work. So that's just MTSS connection.
So I have a quick question on MTSS, which is something that has newly implemented, and there seems to be a lot of expectation that the implementation of MTSS will provide positive results. And so just as a follow-up to what you just said, that if it takes 3 to 5 years for that implementation to be complete, does that also mean it'll be 3 to 5 years before we see any positive benefits of it?
I would say no. The reason it takes 3 to 5 years is it's comprehensive and pretty complex. Like, we're looking at all of our systems. So, in year 1, we're looking at an infrastructure build that includes, things like our data warehousing software. Immediate impact is teams have readier access to data as, they've learned that tool. We have a couple changes that have already occurred that we can see the impact of. Those include some shifts in how student supports are put into place, how data teams are interacting to be proactive instead of reactive. We also have changes in terms of Tier 1 instruction. And one thing that's really important about MTSS is the foundation really is a strong Tier 1 core program that all students can access. So making sure that we're aligned in instruction, we're looking at best practice, we're looking at how our students are responding to that instruction, and we're really starting to help teachers make sure that, students are having common experiences classroom to classroom, and when they're not, principals can coach in. So Tier 1 work is something that is foundational, and then we're looking at, once we've provided for all students, and we're making sure everyone can access that, and we're being preventive and trying to make sure that gaps don't occur, then we're looking at Tier 2 and Tier 3. So some things are already in place. Measurability of some things, this is happening, here's what was happening before, here's what we're doing now. In terms of student progress, every student's starting from a different baseline. So when we look at where students are, we're really looking at growth and what's working for them. And it's a problem-solving process. The same way as it's a complex system to put into place as an infrastructure, every student's individualized problem-solving when we're working at that level is also unique. So teams are really at that granular level as the team described. Some of it is system-wide where we look at curriculum and we've missed a unit, or we haven't gone deep enough here, we have to do more. Some things you can see when you're looking at the curriculum, other things you can't see until you get to the student level. And reporting out at that level is really unique and team-based. So it really kind of depends on what we're talking about. When we say what's the data, it's a lot, and it's really something that is held in the hand of our principals and worked with closely with our team.
I think that's my concern, though. When you say Tier 1 is that the curriculum is accessible for all students, it's clearly not. We already have the data, so saying that MTSS is our solution and we're doing these things, it would be helpful to further see the interventions and integrations being put in place to make Tier 1 accessible for all students.
And that's the curricular infrastructure build, yeah.
Right, but in the immediate, because we can't just let kids sit here for 3 to 5 years and not be accessible to the curriculum, as you just put it yourself.
Right. I would say, I wouldn't let it be said that nothing is happening for students when there's difficulty. Teams are really working to problem solve, and that's been happening. The model that we're using to make it happen is MTSS, but I would say teams are engaged, trying to get better at it, certainly, because we want to see improvement in the scores that we just shared.
Mr. Moran?
And again, I thank you for that, and I really appreciate it because, one of the things that struck me, and I appreciate adding some of the areas of further exploration from when we presented, at CCOB, because that really is the critical point, is what's the intervention points and how are we really building on that? And I know we had some initial discussion around, the summer programs and was really looking at, well, what's the ongoing in-school intervention and how are what are the ways that we are engaging? And I know that MTSS begins to, address that and look at the individualized student, and we're building the larger system around it. And I'm wondering if, the Achievement Imperative Task Force might be the vehicle for some of that interim reporting and benchmarking, similarly in which ways in which we looked at some of the summer programming and kind of tested and fielded those ideas and talked about, and, that because there is that intervention point with administration, community, and board, participation in those meetings, could that be an area where we do some of this more kind of interim milestone reporting, as well as just being able to be accountable on our progress around these issues, if that may be, an avenue for doing that. And also looking, across the board at the various intervention types and making sure that we're building those in.
And certainly it is, and it can be, which is what we actually spent the whole entire meeting on this. We typically break into subgroups for those meetings, and we did not do that at the last meeting. We spent the whole entire session talking about the data, having those conversations as well. And we're not done with that conversation, so it absolutely can be as well, yes.
Ms. Garrison?
I'm just curious, pre-COVID, data that I had seen in the past said about 65% of our students get significant enrichment, private tutoring, Kumon, Mathnasium, Sylvan, H24, all these commercial education places, it's, students out the wazoo, like it's free, but we know that it's not. How much does that impact the achievement gap? Do we have data around that?
I mean, we don't have data around how many kids receive tutoring and the impact on the achievement gap. However, I would say, obviously, if somebody's getting tutoring, it's going to help achievement, right? So that is why the district provides tutoring for our students. So we have tutoring in the elementary school, two different types, one-on-one and small group tutoring as well. And then we also have it at it'll go up soon at both the middle and the high school. We've already posted for our tutors. And so we provide that tutoring for our students for free. So, and we've had a lot of conversations on how do we get the most amount of students in, multiple conversations this year as well, because one of the things that's difficult is we'll provide tutoring and then the students don't show up, or we can't get students there. And so that, you heard Mr. Lilly talk about us saying, should we go out, right? Should we provide the tutoring not at our high schools? What should we provide it in the community, right? And have our people go there, or should we be doing it virtually? We've talked about stipending our staff versus maybe paying hourly to make sure that we get more staff in. And so we continue to have the conversations about how do we get more students to access that tutoring, but the district does offer it for all of our students as a free service. It's not something that costs money. And so our conversation has been, how do we get more and more students to participate in it? With all of the principals, with all the curriculum supervisors, with HR, we've had several conversations, and it's been ongoing, but that's some of the things that we've been brainstorming. But we are able to provide that for all of our students, which is a wonderful thing.
That is a wonderful thing. And from my recollection, during COVID, I can't remember the years, they're all like meshing together, but there was like one-on-one tutoring provided online, and it seemed like that was extraordinarily successful. Am I correct in that? So I'm just thinking, well, whatever was most successful, why don't we duplicate that? Why don't we try that?
Well, it was successful, but we want more students to participate. So our conversation is how do we get even more students to take us up on tutoring? And then how do we
So are
also
we asking
entice
the
staff to be able to
student?
do it as well?
Are we asking the student? Are we getting the whole family involved so that the parent knows it would really be beneficial for your
Yeah.
child to get this extra enrichment?
Yeah, we do reach out to the families as well, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
That's not to say that we're not, like I said, brainstorming other ways to get more students involved, because we absolutely are. We would like our numbers to be even higher,
Right,
for sure.
thank you.
Dr. Sautner?
Thank you. I guess it's been a week since curriculum that I had to sit on this. I still don't feel any better, especially about the math. Because it is, when we look at the African-American students and we look at that vertically, that difference between our students, sounds like something that should not happen in a school that is ranked second in the state. So when I look at these pieces and we dug into it during curriculum, I want to ask some of similar questions, but a few different. One, there is new data out there that did look at things like Khan Academy for math in particular that showed during COVID, with classroom instruction, not in isolation, but with classroom instruction, and that combination did increase. So looking at all those opportunities that not just supports the students after school or in the summer, but during the school. One of the things that, as I was sitting on this data in the last week, I want to know where our kids sit, especially looking at math and African-American students over the course of the years. Like, I want to understand the data and where are our kids tracking from third grade all the way through. And also, we do a great job here touting our wins, which I'm not saying don't do that. There's a lot of great success, be successful, but we never show the losses. Like, when you go to, page 36, it's like growth and achievement. That's great, but I want to see the flip of that coin. Where are opportunities? Every time you look at a SWOT analysis, you're looking at your strengths, but you're also looking at your threats. We need to be doing that for our kids too, and really focus in on where those changes are. I like that we talk about summer and tutor, but let's be honest with those numbers. How many kids are we reaching in summer and in the summer program, and how many kids are we reaching with the tutoring? It was really low in my memory, right? Wasn't tutoring like 11 students?
That was specific to ITAS. That is not, that was a summer program specific to one small subgroup. We're not talking about tutoring. That was not our numbers for the school year tutoring programs. So you're thinking of one small sliver of everything, and only in the summer. So when we're talking about tutoring, we're typically not talking about the summer ITAS program that we're talking about, that I talked about when I was presenting on summer programs, different than our tutoring programs during the school year. But do I feel like we need to be hitting more tutoring after school students? My answer would be yes, which I think you've heard me say a couple times. I don't feel like we're hitting enough students, which is why we're continuing to have the conversations about how to get them in. Summer program-wise, though, we hit a lot of students in the summer programming. And it's gone up every single year since we've been tracking it, including this last summer. We've had, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's thousands of students that come through our summer program.
So then can you correlate? So 1,000 students come through the summer program, and just looking at one lens of that, like math directly, if you're looking at, because ELA looks really good, science looks really good, not every year, or every grade band, but it looks pretty solid. But if you're just looking at math and the summer program, are you then doing an ROI of, is this actually working? Like, are we seeing that this impact made this effort? And I know it's not a one-to-one, and it's not a sweet spot of like, just do that one thing and everything will be better. But are we measuring that along the way? And are we looking at not just our advanced and proficient students, but where are the basic students? Because they worry me too in this district. The kids in the middle, sometimes, we could have some huge gaps there. And where are our kids that are below? And how are we comparing to the state based on the subgroups? So we're just looking at one little lens of this, and there's a lot of questions around it, and where are all of our kids going as well? And then how are they doing by school? We spent a lot of time looking at free and reduced lunch by school, and I don't see the correlation on those first few slides with when we look at the students in the math English. So I was wondering why they were in there. So I guess my question goes back to, Sean, I totally hear you that this is a good thing for that that other group to look at, but I want to know more. And then I want to see what are our inputs and how are they changing our outputs.
Yeah, we do look at, we honestly, when we're focusing on our summer programs, often we're focusing on our students that are in specific subgroups, but also that have scored in areas that we know we need to shore up. And so it's not just about PSSAs, honestly, it's about our curricular-based assessments. When we're identifying and targeting students, PSSA is one small sliver of it, but our curricular-based assessments really should tell us that story of what's going to happen on PSSAs as well, right? And so we use our curricular-based assessments to have students invited into our summer programs. Our summer programs traditionally aren't only based on like math or ELA, it's a blend of everything, including science. We add specials in there as well because it's not just about achievement, it's also about continuing to, you know, really work with our students throughout the year so there's no learning loss as well. But we do beginning and end of year testing or summer testing on our students as well. So we do look at that, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's about one specific content area unless you're talking about something like a tutoring program that's for one content area, or like summer school for one content area. We really try to blend. Often it's an integrated approach. So when you think of SPIES at the middle level, that's an integrated program that really has a thematic blend to it, but it is teaching science, math, social studies, not social studies, science, math, and English in that course as well.
And I understand that, and I do love SPIES, but I guess my question is, if it's not effective and math is an area, what's the extra intervention we need to do to support with math? And I know it's not just what you would think of as a classic math, but it feels like something needs to change. And I'm asking, how are we going to know, what are those changes that we would put in? How are we going to measure their impact? And how can we look at this not just once a year, but more often?
So, and I'll just comment, and I think that, you know, one of the things, all of the points that we're raising, incredibly important and viable, but one of the things and one of the reasons why I pushed or suggested that we look at the Achievement Imperative Task Force is because, as we all know, education isn't only a school-based learning prospect, right? And having the parents, because a lot of the difficulty with math, and as you look at, you know, achievement, is the ability for parents to engage, you know, and help children have that work become embedded. I know I had to stop helping my kids with math very early, right? And, you know, and I have a STEM student who's excelling, right? But thank God he got that from somewhere else that was other than myself or my wife. But, you know, I think the point that I'm making is that it is a comprehensive effort, and that it is also one of the benefits of pushing this through the Achievement Imperative Task Force that I found really beneficial in the work that I did with them was that we had all of those bands to push on and really think about programming beyond how do we help parents be better equipped to move their students forward in STEM and math in particular, if that's an intervention that we're going to pursue. But and again, that reporting would happen here, but the ways in which we can actively engage may be more beneficial in a task force type of situation.
Thank you, that's helpful.
May I jump in? I just wanted to add to that. One of the things we talked about, and I'm glad that you mentioned that parent piece, because that was a huge part of the conversation that we had at AITF. And we talked about parent nights, community nights to provide that support. I'm like you, luckily my husband is a math wizard. And how do we have those conversations? We talked about, you know, looking at the students, the names behind the numbers, what is their story, what are their needs, looking at placement, honestly, and how we're placing our students. So we did have a really good conversation, and having community members that know the students and know the families was really great in that meeting. And so I do think that, and we did say that moving forward, that would be a good place. And so it was, there was a lot of questions, and similar to the questions that we have here tonight, and I've written down a lot of those notes as we're talking, but in addition to the tutoring, and providing that space, and people, when we're looking at our families, I think when we start talking about it in these family groups, knowing making it something that families think is important, that they want to attend. Are we explaining these concepts? Mathematics, the way we did it was differently. I share my favorite story of the lattice method. As a principal visiting 3 classrooms, they did the lattice method 3 different ways. And I was like, 3 times 3 is this. I don't need these diagonals and numbers. And so when we're thinking about some of our parents and our families and our communities, they learned a certain way. And so how do they help their children if they've learned a different way? And so I think bringing everyone together, as you mentioned, is huge. And we did talk about that at AITF.
Ms. Garrison?
My question was around, I think it's great that when we are compared to the rest of the state, we're just stellar, it's wonderful. I'm curious how we look from a global perspective. With our highest achieving students, where would we land in reference to like PISA scores? Where would Lower Merion be? Do we have any data around that?
We haven't taken that assessment, so I wouldn't have any gauge of where we would land because we haven't participated in that assessment.
Do we have any information about where our students would be in the global market? Because we're just not in Pennsylvania. I mean, we have, opportunities really that are global, or even how do we compare to Connecticut or Washington or, you understand what I'm saying? This from a national level. Do we have any data around that, or just comparing ourselves to other people in Pennsylvania?
Well, Pennsylvania's apples to apples, right? I mean, but if you look at like a U.S. News and World Report, we always rank high in that regard as well, and that's a national report. I can't give you an achievement comparison across the nation because I don't know one that we participate in that exists at this point.
Nate.
Yeah, but I understand that, but I mean, from our district, I don't have the NEEP scores. I hear you on that, but yeah. No, I understand what you're saying.
Did you say NAEP? Okay.
Ms. Schrock?
Yeah, I just had a question. Given some of the, given the discrepancies in subgroups, specifically for 4th grade math and connecting it to entrance into advanced math at the middle school and some of the requirements, have we considered or are we considering the entry requirements, given we already know the disparity of who would be able to enter those programs now? And it could be through the Achievement Task Force or another time. I would just offer that I would like us to look into that, given we already know from this data it's completely inequitable. So I guess have we, is the question. If we haven't, can.
Nancy, do you want to talk about placement for 4th grade math?
So we review the criteria every year. We go back to it and review it every year. And Jason and I collaboratively look at the data along with the math specialist. We have opened it up more over the past few years. For example, in grade 5, it was, we had students that had to have meet a particular criteria to take the assessment. And past 2 years, we've opened it up to all students to participate in the assessment. So we have opened it up. For students on the cusp, we look at all aspects of the data very, very carefully. We're very diligent about that. We meet as a team. It's a very thoughtful process. So even though we do have a criteria, we look at the whole student as well. So we look at all aspects.
And I would just add to that, what Nancy's not sharing is when she says they look at all aspects of the data, I mean, they go test, but like when they have students who didn't meet the criteria, they go through the actual test item by item, looking at the student work to see, was it a computational error? Did they still get the concept? Is this a student we could give a push opportunity to? So they really are trying to open as much possibility for students as they can.
And if student didn't show work, go back, have the student show the work. So we're very,
So maybe we could talk to the Achievement Task Force, because given we already have the opportunity gap and we don't provide a tier 1 curriculum that's accessible for all students based on the data, the criteria set forth is unachievable from the onset for some of our students in subgroups. And The implications of that are they will not have access to upper level math, which precludes them from admission to certain universities, starting in 5th grade, if not going into that and getting through Algebra 1 and up to pre-calculus and beyond. So, Dr. Jones, I don't know who takes that on, but I am concerned about that and furthering our work here.
I'm on it.
I just had a quick question. When we're talking about the placement, is that something that the students are requesting that they want to go into a more advanced math, or is that something that you just get there on the first day of school and you're like, this is your math class, congratulations?
There's an opportunity for students from 4th to 5th grade to accelerate into, from 4th to 5th grade accelerated math, which is actually 6th grade math. And there's criteria, it's, which involves teacher input, grades, benchmark assessments. So it's varied and it's weighted. So it's something that students, at the end of the year, it's determined. Parents can opt their students out if they so choose. So it is in place. Parents are aware of it from the beginning of 4th grade. So it's not something that they just find out. I mean, they go through this process and data's looked at very carefully, like Dr. Gaudioso said. And then 5th grade, there's another opportunity, 5th to 6th grade, going from 5th grade math to grade 7, 8 math in 6th grade. What's that? Or 7th grade math. Both of those opportunities have a summer bridge attached to it, so students have to go through the summer bridge and be successful in that to enter into accelerated math.
Ms. Schaffmeister.
Okay, I'm coming at this a little differently. As you know, I'm very much into the social emotional learning and teaching the whole child. And I think we need to take a step back from this and realize we're looking at a test. These kids know how to take a test that on the outset may be inequitable to certain subgroups. And we need to consider that we have a culture in this school, we have very driven students, and that usually starts in the upper grades, of which I've heard students say they've been discriminated against by other students because they're in a CP class. And there's a certain culture that we need to, it's great having driven students, but there's a point where we push it too hard. And we want to make sure the students are learning, and all subgroups of students are learning, and that the teachers can meet the needs from a social emotional level. And that's what I would like to see in an equitable environment for every student. And I'm hoping MTSS is a start of that. But as far as coming from the point of a test, like a standardized test, I just feel like we need to take a step back and realize what we're talking about right now from that is not really saying throughout the year how well students are doing and how well they're doing in that subgroup. That's what data I want to see, and I want to see that they're learning and that that's something they will take through with them for life. Okay?
So I wanted to follow up with a couple of questions around, and we talked about this a little bit at the curriculum committee meeting, the reality that the 3rd grade math is the first year of the PSSAs, and I very much hear the frustration with the PSSAs in and of themselves. But we're already knowing right at that very beginning that certain subgroups are already, we don't need to, there's the initial test is lower, like the proficiency in the advancement of certain subgroups is already lower, and that's already in 3rd grade. So we need to make sure that we're addressing that in the earlier grades, and we seem to do that a lot in the sort of ELA world. But what interventions are happening sort of on the math side of things at that very, sort of the kindergarten, 1st grade level, so that when we hit 3rd grade, it doesn't already exist?
I'm going to have Nancy speak to that, but that's a great question.
So some of the things that are in place at the elementary level, we have, some of the interventions are provided, and they're also carefully monitored, such as targeted push-in or pull-out services by the math specialists who work in conjunction with the ISTs or the coordinator of student intervention. We have our after-school programs in grade 1 and 2. In addition to the summer programs, Win Time, which happens the K to 4 level, added formative assessments, spiral reviews, online diagnostic and adaptive programs such as iReady, Dreambox at the K to 4 level, MTSS, as Dr. Godioso explained, and the use of the evidence-based protocol tips in our tutoring. Teachers meet as a PLC team to review and analyze data using a process of reflective analysis. I had my meeting with the math specialist today going over the grade 2 and 3 benchmark data and identifying the students and what's happening with these students. Where are they? Were they getting support? If they're not getting support, why not? Talked to several principals today about certain students. So it's an ongoing process. I'm really trying to be on top of that and making sure that it's in time, the interventions. Very serious and very passionate about that. And I do hear what you're saying. It has to happen early on because the gap just gets bigger. So really working hard to, to address that early on with all of those things. And then this year we added the STEM special, which focuses on those 21st century skills. And we can see the difference in our younger students now and their ability to attack problems. And also the science PBL units, which are implemented that focus on transdisciplinary learning and making connections in the real world. So we're doing a lot of things curriculum-wise to address student needs and really trying to focus on K1 and 2. And I think with the addition of the focus on literacy, early literacy, and I had mentioned this and Dory had mentioned this at the other meeting, it helps students navigate, like focusing on literacy in K to 2 really helps students navigate those more complex word problems that they have to comprehend in order to solve and be able to explain their mathematical thinking. So I think the focus on early literacy is going to help as well. And if you wanted to add to that, Dory, too.
So I'm just going to tag team Nancy. But one of the things that Nancy and Dr. Godioso and the literacy specialist, you mentioned early literacy and the amount of assessments that are early on. When do we catch them early to identify? So providing a universal screener for math is like we have fluency early on in early literacy. That's numeracy and operations. That's their foundational skills. So adding that universal screener, I think, Anna, you asked this earlier, that will be the immediacy of what do we see in the screener? Can we now in real time just dig deeper to see why and then provide those supports? That's one thing that is changing that is similar to what we do in literacy. So
And we don't have that yet, but we're looking
Right.
for it for next year.
So I think that's something you asked, like, what are we doing right now? That's something that we
coming.
believe will make a difference in terms of being able pre all of third grade and all the things you're mentioning, and before they take the PSSA, that's when it matters. So we've been really focusing our conversations to unite forces to say, what are we doing that works, to your point, and how can we replicate that in the other areas so that we see often some of the same students that aren't doing
Yes.
well across the data.
And we have
that's
those
one-
conversations continuously.
Absolutely. And literacy specialists in the math, we follow a similar model. And with MTSS, it becomes an if-then. So if we see this, then what do we do? And you talked about earlier, Anna, interim assessments. So I will speak for ELA. I look to the math to say, okay, they have these unit assessments. That's something that in ELA, we're going to replicate that because I want them to know you've taught it, we've assessed it, what's going on, and we've leveraged up our formative assessments. So those conversations are taking place. And the emphasis is before the PSSA scores you're seeing, because that is the end game. We want to get to it before you even look at those results. So quite honestly, that's where we're focusing our time, not that we're looking at those scores as they go along, but we're looking at our kindergartners. We're looking at our preschools. We're trying to get ahead of the game instead of being reactionary and be a little proactionary. So it's a team effort. That helps.
Thanks. Ms. Robinson?
providing the universal screener for math, what grades were you thinking of doing that?
K through 6.
K through 6? Starting next year?
Yes, that's something I proposed in the budget.
Okay.
For next year, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Garrison?
I'm curious in a reference to third grade in particular, are we still doing, I just remember like they were trying to show the children like 6 different ways to do addition or, instead of simplifying it, it's like our curriculum was a mile long and an inch deep. When you're young, you need a simple way to learn arithmetic. And we have all these, this is higher level thinking. They don't need higher level thinking. They need to get something that they can grasp and hold on to and that their parents would be able to help them with. I had so many friends who would call me and say, what is this? I don't understand. What's going on? And I would break it down for them. And they would still be like, what? It's like 20 minutes to do one multiplication problem. Are we still doing that program?
So,
First, I want to know, are we still doing that program?
So the focus, yes, yes, we are. We are. Okay, and the focus is on developing number sense early on and mental math thinkers. Students is just not focusing on digits and focusing on place value and different strategies to add and subtract so that they are learning through a number sense and understanding that when they're adding numbers, they're not just adding digits, they're adding, tens and ones and hundreds. So it's developing that early number sense, which really, if you go into a classroom and I've talked to students, they can add 389 plus 454 in their heads because they know how to break apart numbers and they know what they mean. So it's really developing that true number sense. It really helps them later on.
But I think it's helping some students who've already had a firm rooting in mathematics before they actually got here. And that's my point for those. This a gap that we're talking about starts before they get to school. So if we don't empower those parents with those skills so they know how to help their kids, we're going to be talking about this in the next 10, 15 years, about the gap getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Because those who have the money and the resources, they're going to always say, hey, I'm going to pay for this additional services. And so I think we have to look at these curriculums and say, how can we approach this that the child who doesn't have all the resources can get it? And then we can build in, this is 15 different ways to do addition, as opposed to what we're doing now, which causes more confusion for those kids and their parents because they can't help them.
Ms. Schaffmeister?
Hi. Quick question about the, that's Voyages, correct?
No, that's.
And what grade does that go up to?
Right now, we are using that core resource in grades K to 5.
K through 5. And then what program are we using in the middle school then?
Envision for 6th and 7th grade and 8th grade.
Okay.
And then the integrated math is a different resource.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
No. I checked with Peter. He doesn't have any questions. Mr. Lee is participating via phone. So thank you all very much. I just did want to note that there was a lot of reference back to conversation that we had at the curriculum committee of the board. That's the meeting that meets on the first Friday of every month. And then often our education committee.
Wednesday.
Oh, sorry, first Wednesday of the month, policy, first Friday, my mistake. And then the education committee meeting, which is generally the second Monday of each month, often revisits one of the bigger topics that are discussed, and we bring it to the full board. So I just wanted to remind everyone that's sort of the process, and also to let everyone know that we have started to record the curriculum and policy committee meeting among the other committee meetings we have, and you can find those recordings on the website as well, sort of in the same area as the Monday night meetings are. So if you heard something that we talked about referencing something that happened at a previous meeting, you can go back and look at that. So thank you all very much for your presentation, responses, and for all the questions from the board. It's much appreciated. Now we're going to move on to audience recognition. So at this time, Ms. LaPera, we open the chat feature, and those of you at home will see a 10-minute timer appear on your screen. You can submit your questions or submit your comments and or questions via the chat feature. Please be sure to begin with your full name and where you reside within the district in order for your comment to be shared. That's true for both in-person and chat comments. And Ms. LaPera is going to ask if we have any in-person comments for tonight's meeting.
Okay, I'll begin. Ruth Jenkins from Wynwood. Many years in the classroom at many different levels of teaching. I have an elementary school degree and I have a secondary degree in English and history. First of all, I think what you're doing is you're missing the elephant in the room. We don't have full-day kindergarten. And full-day kindergarten is where we get this separation. The children who are coming in to first grade that have been to private nursery schools, they've been in all-day schools, and those disadvantaged students, they're at babysitters. They're not coming in reading, they're not coming in knowing their numbers, they're not coming in knowing their colors. They are at a disadvantage right from the beginning. So, you know, before you even go anywhere, you better take into consideration that FDK is really a most important thing, and I've been talking about this for 30 years, and there's been one excuse after another. The other thing is the tutoring. After-school tutoring is not going to work. Students don't want to be here after school. They want to, you need in-school tutoring. You need to have tutoring during a free period. You need tutoring, a lunch and learn period, which is another whole aspect. As far as parents understanding the curriculum, a Zoom meeting, a tutoring for the parents, and also, as we said before, simplifying it. You know, when you, I'm also a piano player. When I start to take piano lessons, I don't play concertos. I play Mary Had a Little Lamb on simple little notes, so I understand where everything is located and what the concepts are. And then I go on to more advanced. Same with the math. Students have to know math, have to understand how to function. Then you can go on and play Carnegie Hall, if you so to speak. The other thing is, do the report cards reflect advancements? Or do they just reflect where you are in a certain time frame? So you talked about, you know, that you're showing growth. Do the report cards show growth for the parents so they understand that they may not be on grade level, but they're getting better? Or is there a written form that says your child is I mean, I remember writing these long documents of your child is participating, it's doing better, standing up, getting friendly, all of the real person, not just the grades and the marks and the production, but the real person themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jenkins.
And that is our only in-person comment, so Ms. Buckman can do the chats.
Before we get involved, thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Points well taken. Oh, thank you so much, thank you. And points well taken. We currently have the report cards do demonstrate, show progress. And also the Targeted K program. Now, those, again, as we've heard this evening, as we're talking about programs and different assessments, these are still things that, you know, they're in place, but we want to delve deeper. So again, I just wanted to recognize that from your comments. Thank you so much.
Ms. Buckman, if you want to start reading any public comments that have submitted via the chat.
Sure. The first one is from Dina Yaski of Wynwood. Do you know what intervention is scientifically proven to reduce achievement gaps? Full-day kindergarten. We want to address these gaps early, full-day kindergarten. You don't want to wait 3 to 5 years for MTSS to take root, full-day kindergarten. Our district has a reputation for having limited bandwidth,
when it comes to tackling multiple objectives at once. I sincerely hope that the board and remaining administration ensures that a search for a new superintendent and handoff in no way slows down the timeline or impedes action being taken on the district's prioritized challenges, most importantly, full-day kindergarten. The committee has done work to put the many decades' worth of cries for FDK into action. Just last month, the State House presented updated legislation calling on school districts to provide universal free pre-K. How can a proclaimed top-tier district like Lmsd still be so far behind what everyone else already knows as scientifically researched best practice for children? The next comment is from Sarah Thomas of Wynwood. First, I want to congratulate Dr. Mameen on your upcoming position as Secretary of Education for Pennsylvania. I hope that you are able to continue some of the work that has been started in Lower Merion at the state level, namely healthy start times and universal full-day kindergarten for all students in the state. While our district is not the first to implement either of these initiatives, challenge us to be a leader in implementing them. I urge the board to keep these initiatives in mind when making a decision regarding the selection of our district's next superintendent. Finally, with the news of Dr. Mameen's resignation, I am wondering if the Ask the Superintendent session scheduled for January 20th will still be happening. The next comment is from Mark Fasano of Wynwood. We don't need to further preschool connections, we need full-day kindergarten. The next comment is from Abby Rubin of Ballackinwood. Full-day kindergarten will lessen the achievement gap, not working with preschools. Please prioritize FDK as soon as possible. Kids coming into K in the fall have been negatively affected by COVID learning loss. Thank you and good luck, Dr. Mameen. The next comment is from Colleen Campbell of Ballackinwood. Please continue to keep full-day kindergarten a priority. It was great to see the survey come out, although many have concerns about it reaching all the families with children who will be entering kindergarten in the next couple of years. Full-day kindergarten is an opportunity to provide a solid foundation and support for children coming from many different backgrounds and experiences. Having a positive kindergarten experience academically and socially will benefit children throughout their school years. We need to prioritize getting full-day kindergarten in place as soon as possible. Parents need to know now whether or not the 22-23 school year is a possibility for full-day kindergarten, as private kindergartens in the community are asking for commitments for the 2023-2024 school year. Parents are committed to LMSD full-day kindergarten and need clear communication from the district. We wish Dr. Mameen the best in advocating for all children and full-day K for Pennsylvania. The next comment is from Michelle McGill of Ballackinwood. I am a parent of a subgroup. I was not made aware of tutoring being offered at my son's school. I would take advantage of tutoring for areas of concern. How are parents informed of the tutoring program? That's all the comments at this time, but there's still some time left in the window.
Thank you, Ms. Buckman.
As we're waiting for time, I just wanted to make a public statement in regards to full-day kindergarten, healthy start times. We're still working in regards to the fields at 1835 and Arnold Field Lights. Yes, I've had conversation with the school board. This work will continue. You know, amidst the transition, this is not a ploy or an opportunity to just put things on freeze and not continue the good work. And again, I want to publicly thank the many partners that are involved in this work. You know, the parents, the community, and also our community groups and legislators. So yes, this work will continue. And again, I'm still here in Pennsylvania. Yes, I will be supportive throughout the transition period as needed in regards to making sure that the interim and permanent superintendent have all of the information. The administrative team is still here and intact. We'll have all of the information and we'll continue to move forward with these very important ideals. Also, the continuation of strengthening the work within the 5 pathways will continue. Again, our strategic plan document is a document that is exciting because it really gives great insight into the work and the abilities of our children, and again, moving them to infinite possibilities of success. So yes, the work will continue. It will continue. It won't even stop a day once I leave. So please know that. And again, thank you for your continued partnership and support around all of this work as we've been grappling with the 5 prioritized areas over the past 15 months.
We do have one more comment in the chat, again, from Michelle McGill of Ballackinwood. As a parent in this district, I would appreciate someone answering my question, and her question was about how tutoring opportunities were communicated.
It hasn't begun this year at the middle level, and so they haven't been communicated yet because of that. The principals and the assistant principals work to identify students that would benefit from tutoring. They reach out to the parents and the students, but we're not yet up and running at this point in time.
When will we be up and running?
We're hoping by February.
I'm sorry, time is up. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you. So thank you all for your public comments. We have upcoming meetings, mostly in person here in the District Administration Boardroom, unless otherwise noted. January 18th is the Legislative Committee. It'll be at 7 p.m. via Zoom. We'll have a conversation around fair funding. January 19th is the Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting here at 8:30 a.m. It will be live streamed and recorded. January 23rd is our next regular business board meeting at 8 p.m. here. And then on January 25th is the Communications Committee via Zoom at 7 p.m., which is Wednesday, January 25th. Thank you all for your time. Good night.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned.